Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest in sports news, fantasy analysis, and opinions. Don't forget the hot takes. Can't have a sports show without hot takes these days. What about hot cakes, though? I want some hot cakes. Now here's your host, ready to jump into the thick of things, Dwayne Callender.
Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. We are going to be talking about the South region today for the NCAA tournament, or as I like to call it, the land of misfit teams, because, out of all the regions, I don't understand how they could call this the second strongest region when in reality the situation is that there are more overseeded teams in this region than in any other region in the entire bracket. There were plenty of teams with flaws, and this is the region most likely to be an absolute crapshoot, and that's why most NCAA tournaments this year, I believe, will be decided by whoever can get this region most correct, because there are a lot of points up for grabs here and a lot of places to have missteps. So let's get right to it by talking about the overall, the second overall one seed here in Virginia. Virginia, by all the offensive and defensive metrics, they are a top three team. They're in the KenPom rankings. They're the number one team. They're ahead of Duke. They're ahead of Gonzaga. But the issue remains that no team in the modern basketball era, once you've gone past the early years of the 20th century with the Princeton offense, no team has ever won the NCAA tournament playing the slowest pace out of any Division I team. Virginia ranks 353 out of 353 of eligible schools in tempo. They move so slowly. I cannot stress this enough. The biggest knock on Virginia is the fact that while they are excellent in terms of efficiency, excellent in terms of their defense, the problem is that I view Virginia as a team that will always put out a B+ performance, because they don't have enough possessions to blow you out of any game whatsoever. So the problem is that once it comes to March and NCAA tournament time, a team that can shoot the lights out, play an A game, Virginia doesn't have an answer for. That was the whole reason behind the UMBC upset last year. UMBC played out of their minds. They were hitting a ton of shots, and Virginia couldn't keep up with it. That was the problem. The other team hit shots. And, it's a terrifying feeling when you have a team like Virginia that, on paper, you would say, yeah, they can make a run to the NCAA tournament, and I get the statistical metrics of places like teamrankings.com, which I highly recommend people check out. And you have all these statistical measures that say Virginia is a well undervalued pick by the public because of their continued lack of success in the NCAA tournament under coach Tony Bennett. I get it, but, I look at this team and I say that with a guard like DeAndre Hunter, who will likely be a lottery pick in the NBA next year, they don't get to showcase how top quality they are more often than they should. And I agree with Charles Barkley when he says that Virginia plays as though they can only drive 65 miles an hour, and at any time they have to hit 70 and above, it's like they're having a heart attack. It's a case where I want to see Virginia do well because it's a good story. They run a great program. I just don't feel great picking and recommending Virginia as a pick unless you're in a bracket pool that has over 200 entrants, because at least then you give yourself a little bit of differential and a pick that no one's going to have. When you're in a small bracket, and you've got 50 entries or so, it's hard to put in a recommendation for Virginia because, yes, even though you could be a differential, Virginia could just as easily bow out at any point in the competition if somebody has a great day shooting the ball. That's the fear of picking Virginia. It's not the fact that they can't get there. It's just that the risk of them not getting there easily can bowl you over because the public is not on Virginia's side. Most people are picking Virginia to get knocked out sometime in the either the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, depending on some of the matchups. Because again, it's been just one of those cases where enough losses and people just lose faith in you. So I've seen people have them going out to Wisconsin. I've seen them having them go out to Kansas State. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but there is risk in picking Virginia. I just have to say that it's one where I don't necessarily see the scenario where Virginia can't get to the Final Four. I just have to say, as part of the recommendation, take a look at your bracket pool. Get if you have a sense of who's playing in it, that'll give you a better judge of how to roll with this one. But from a statistical measure, yeah, you can play Virginia to make it to the Final Four. I can't say it's a bad play because by the stats, they should be able to get there. The recency bias and the continued history of the program tells you otherwise, that they're just not getting there. But we'll just have to table that part of the conversations just so we can get to the rest of these teams. Mississippi versus Oklahoma, the 8-9 matchup. This is a case where you can flip a coin. Ole Miss lost 4 of its last 6 regular season games and got knocked out of their SEC tournament on the jump. So it's a case where they're not playing well, but they're going up against an Oklahoma squad that also got knocked out early in their conference tournament. Their only real quality win this year was against Wofford. And outside of that, Oklahoma struggles quite a bit on offense. I look at this game as a toss-up because, I kind of see this one being a case where Ole Miss barely slides by, but they're not playing well either. So I could easily see them going down to Oklahoma. Depending on how you want to slice this game, it's a point difference if it's a plus, if it's just a 1 point game, or if it's a point plus seed, then you can get a little bit more weight to Oklahoma. It's just 2 teams that I don't have a whole lot of confidence in regardless. The 5-12 matchup between Wisconsin and Oregon. Oregon, they stole a bid from a number of teams, most notably UNC Greensboro, which was the last team left out of the tournament, by winning the Pac-12 tournament. Oregon was a 6th seed in the Pac-12 tournament, which goes to show you how badly they played this year because the Pac-12 was horrendous. They come in with a 23-12 record. The only thing I can say about Oregon is that they're coming together at the right time. Peyton Pritchard is their offensive catalyst in the backcourt as the point guard. He's averaged nearly 20 points a game over the 3 games of the Pac-12 tournament. They're 18th in defensive efficiency, which is shocking because normally Dana Altman's team are not very good defensively. But they do a good job of making you miss 3-pointers, and I just I look at the matchup against Wisconsin here. Oregon has a shot, even though I'm not a big fan of the Pac-12 in general. Wisconsin's just not that talented this year. They've got Ethan Happ being the biggest difference maker on that squad, but Wisconsin, true to form, they're going to play at a slow tempo. It's they're ranked 333rd in the KenPom rankings in terms of tempo, and it's just the way Wisconsin plays their basketball. They like rock fights. I would normally just say in a rock fight you always take Wisconsin, but this has been an aberration year for Oregon where they've had to rely on their defense more than ever before. I think if they can, they kind of do what they do and limit the 3-point shooting, that puts Wisconsin in a bit of trouble here. So this is one of those 5-12 upsets I can see happening, just because Wisconsin plays at such a slow tempo that they're not going to be able to pull away from Oregon. So it's a matter of who can hit some shots down the stretch in the second half, and that'll be the team that takes it. And in the round of 32, they're going to have a good matchup because the 4-13 matchup, I think, is a clear case of, the circumstances bearing out where you have to reevaluate the squads. Because Kansas State, even though they're a 4 seed, Dean Wade, he still hasn't gotten real clearance as if he's going to play or not. Dean Wade was the number one offensive option in Kansas State, their best rebounder. It's one of those issues where, yes, they have a top 10 type of defense in terms of efficiency, but they play at a really glacial pace, and their best offensive weapon may not even play in this opening round game. Whereas you're going up against a UC Irvine team that's on a 16-game winning streak. They hold their opponents to 40% shooting on 2-point baskets, which is the best in the country. They do a decent job from 3-point range as well. I look at this as a case where Kansas State's going to struggle to score, even if Dean Wade plays. If he doesn't play, this is at best a pick'em game that most people aren't even viewing as a pick'em game. So, to me personally, if you're doing a bracket where you're getting the value plus the seeding of the team, or you're getting upset points, UC Irvine's the pick here. I look at this as, from an expected value standpoint, UC Irvine is the pick here, because even if Kansas State gets the win, the next round, they're not going to match up well against Wisconsin, because Wisconsin does what they do, and they're healthier than Kansas State. And if it's a matchup against Oregon, Oregon just played Wisconsin, which, for the same reason I said, if they can get past Wisconsin, they can definitely get past Kansas State. The wild card in here is UC Irvine. If UC Irvine can get past Kansas State, that opens up the door to them, because, again, they're going to be playing a very similar style opponent in Wisconsin. They can win that matchup. If it's against Oregon, then you can flip a coin, and Oregon might get past UC Irvine. But I think you're going to see a double-digit seed playing Virginia in the round of 16, which is the best case scenario for Virginia, to be perfectly honest, in getting to the Final Four, is by playing higher seeded teams than they were originally slated to do because of the overseeding. Then we come up to the 6-11 matchup, and how Villanova, despite winning the Big East regular season title, the Big East Conference championship, got placed as a 6 seed. While Marquette got the 5 seed. These are the things that I can nitpick to death with the NCAA about cherry-picking matchups, because the logic, when you apply it on a grander scale, doesn't make sense. And they can say all they want about paying attention to teams' travel schedules. They are cherry-picking matchups that they want. Villanova didn't get any benefit of the doubt in terms of their seeding. But in terms of the bracket itself, this opens up nicely for Villanova. This was supposed to be a down year for Jay Wright and his group. They struggled in the second half of the year, but I will say this for the Wildcats. They have experience with these guys on the bench for a lot of the championship run. I kind of look at this as, you know, a case where, no, Villanova's not going to win their third national title in 4 years, but they can make a run. They can absolutely make a run, just due to the standpoint that, their defense isn't that great this year, but they still have a potent offense, and they're in a weaker bracket because St. Mary's got in with the automatic qualifier spot because they upset Gonzaga in the West Coast Conference final. But the issue here is that St. Mary's is not that. I mean, they look good from a statistical model standpoint, but from an actual performance standpoint throughout the year, they lost twice to Gonzaga by one game by 48 points, and another matchup by double digits before upsetting Gonzaga. So part of me feels as though that win against Gonzaga had to do with Gonzaga just looking past St. Mary's and not paying attention to the final of the conference tournament. So I have a tougher time seeing the Gales as a stronger competitor. I think Villanova takes care of business here. I can't pick an upset with this one. You know, I know some of the models are saying this is a closer matchup. I just don't see it. You know, if I get beat with Villanova, I get beat. But I like Villanova to be able to make a run here because in the 3-14 matchup, you got Purdue against Old Dominion. I'm not a fan of Purdue. I think they're a very weak 3 seed. Texas Tech is leaps and bounds a stronger team than Purdue, in my opinion. LSU, even with all their off the court issues, a better team. Houston's a better 3 seed. Purdue got a favorable draw if they can make a run here. I don't think they're deserving of it. I think they would get beat by Villanova, but they're going up against an Old Dominion squad that does play very good defense. That's their calling card. They don't really do much else in terms of that'll move the needle in terms of a team. They're only they're ranked 113th in the KenPom rankings for a reason. Their offense is not great. They play a really slow tempo. This game against Purdue is going to be a boring game. I'll be perfectly honest. I'm watching every one of these games anyway, but I will most likely end up fast forwarding through this one once I see it on replay because I can't see Purdue and Old Dominion lining up the scoreboard here. This game's going to be played in the low to mid 50s. Maybe Purdue breaks 60, but I just don't see a whole lot going on with this one. But I'll take Purdue, but I like Villanova's chances against Purdue straight up in the round of 32. Cincinnati against Iowa. So the 7-10 matchup. Iowa just had a horrific stretch down the end of the year, losing 6 of the last 8. Their coach, Fran Dunphy, getting suspended for arguing with officials after an official threw out Dunphy's son, who's also on the team, from a game. It just wasn't a good look. Iowa did not finish the season strong. They're not very good from a defensive standpoint. They're 115th in efficiency. While they do score at a good clip, they're 15th in offensive efficiency. It's just the disparity of what they give up on offense because they're giving up so many cheap buckets on the defensive end. I just think Cincinnati is going to go in and just maul them. Cincinnati is still very good at crashing the boards because they can't shoot from range very well. So, Cincinnati is still going to be a team that is highly dependent on being able to get rebounds because of their lack of 3-point shooting. So I'm going to look at this as a case where Cincinnati, I expect them to get the win here. It's not going to look pretty, but they should be able to beat up on the glass against Iowa and get the job done. I don't see an upset happening here. And then comes our number 2 seed in Tennessee, playing as the representative of the Patriot League, Colgate as the 15th seed. Here's the case for Tennessee. Tennessee has excellent balance in scoring. Admiral Schofield is a load to deal with in the paint. Tennessee has quite possibly, and here's the thing, Schofield, even though he's a guard, is a great 3-point shooter and can get into the paint. The Vols were the AP number 1 team for weeks on end in college basketball, and everyone kept questioning, is this team for real? From a metric standpoint, they have some of the most wins in the NCAA against top-ranked teams. They are 3rd in offensive efficiency. They do a great job. I can't knock Tennessee as an actual team. They do a good job defensively as well. The reason I have an issue with Tennessee is their head coach, Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes is a master of doing less with more than any other coach in the NCAA tournament. I cannot stress this enough. Rick Barnes has a 22-23 record in the NCAA tournament in his 38 years as a head coach. Yes, he's made the Final Four, but that was back in 2003 with Texas. He has 11 first-round losses in his career in the NCAA tournament. His teams do not play well in the NCAA tournament. This is a guy who managed to get blown out by Tim Floyd, another college coaching reject, when he had Kevin Durant on his team. No one even remembers Kevin Durant playing for Texas because of how badly they got embarrassed in the NCAA tournament when Durant was a consensus All-American player and was one of the best players in college basketball, and Rick Barnes still got bounced early. I cannot stress this enough, how little faith I have in Rick Barnes coaching this Tennessee team. The team itself, loaded with talent. They have the ability to get to the Final Four. I just have no faith in their coaching staff, and that's a big problem because a lot of the NCAA tournament hinges upon coaching and being able to get the best out of your players on a short turnaround basis. So, when they're matching up against Colgate that can stretch the floor and have a number of big guys that can shoot 3-pointers, because they've got 2 guys that shoot over that shoot over 40% from 3-point range. In particular, the 6'10" Rapolas Ivanauskas. He can stretch the floor. Colgate can give Tennessee trouble because most of the time what I've seen out of Barnes' teams out the gate for NCAA tournament games is they start slow, they don't get into a rhythm until the second half of the game, and Colgate's not a team that you want to have hanging around because they can shoot 3-pointers, and all it takes is a couple of buckets in the second half. You got a tight game on your on your hands, and you got the crowd cheering on for an upset, and you got everyone turning against you. Tennessee should be able to travel well enough with their fan base, but I don't necessarily like because this feels like a story where Tennessee gets bounced early, whether it's a surprise upset win against Colgate, a loss against Colgate. I don't see it happening, but even then, it's a tough matchup in around the 32 because Cincinnati is going to be playing in Columbus, Ohio for that round of 32 matchup against Tennessee. So Tennessee is going to be playing on the road in Ohio against Cincinnati. That's a very physical team. I can see a scenario where Cincinnati pulls off the upset and people are going to say it's a shocking upset. And I can't say that it's that shocking because it's a matchup that doesn't really play great for Tennessee because of how well Cincinnati plays defense. You know, it's a case where Tennessee's going to have to shoot the ball well from the outside portion. And, you know, not for nothing, I've just seen this story too many times with Rick Barnes' teams where they just come out flat. I can't put my finger on what happens from a coaching perspective, getting the players ready. I've just seen it happen way too many times. This Tennessee team is very capable of getting all the way to the championship game. They've been that good during the regular season. The problem is, I have less faith in Tennessee than I do Virginia, which is a scary proposition to say, but it's the truth of the matter. So that's where I kind of size this one up because, you know, when you're judging this South region, it's going to be coming down to how you feel about Virginia, how you feel about Tennessee, and do you think Nova has a run in them? I think Nova has a run in them. I don't really have that much faith in Tennessee. But if there's any year where Virginia can make it to the Final Four, it's this year because this is a bracket region where there's just I don't see enough threats to Virginia in the top half that would give me trepidation. It's more who they face out of the bottom half of the draw, and I think it comes down to Tennessee or Villanova. But man, oh man, do I have a lot of concern about Tennessee in that Cincinnati matchup, potentially in the round of 32, because, again, it seems ripe for an upset, and I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. So that will do it from my perspective on the South region. You know, obviously take a listen to my breakdown of the other regions, but you know, in terms of this potential for a Final Four matchup, I still think overall this is a Duke year. I mean, it's been the Zion Williamson show all year. For folks who haven't seen him play, definitely check out the tournament to see him. Even if you hate Duke, Zion is probably going to be one of those NBA players you're going to have a fun time watching for the next couple of years because of the athletic feats he can pull off. You just kind of shake your head at a guy his size being able to move that well. You know, out west, we're going to see if Gonzaga can actually make a run in the tournament here and actually get to the Final Four. They got some stiffer competition than Virginia does, but you know, that's the way it's shaping up. And then in the Midwest region, coming down to Carolina and Kentucky, I just think that they're so much further ahead of some of these other squads that, you know, it's a really nice matchup in the Elite Eight if we can get that pairing of North Carolina and Kentucky, similar to how they paired up Duke and Michigan State. If that matchup happens in the Elite Eight, I'd be looking forward to Carolina, Kentucky as well, between the two basketball blue bloods. So that'll do it for my review of the NCAA tournament. But thanks for listening, and best of luck in all of your brackets, folks. And just remember, pay attention to the scoring format because that's really where you're going to be able to see some dividends if you play your cards right. So that's all for now, and have a good one.